I'm Liz Mead, and I recently retired as a Detective Chief Superintendent from Bedfordshire Police, where I was the head of crime and the head of public protection. I served for 30 years just in Bedfordshire, and I've been asked really to share my story about where it started and why I wanted to join the police. And what we're going to do is going to do it in sort of small chunks, really, and starting today with my childhood, really, and how I ended up joining Bedfordshire Police when I was 19 years old. So way back in the 1970s, there were television programs on. There were only 4 channels, so you had to pick them, which ones you wanted. Actually, in the 70s, there were 3. And it was Juliet Bravo for me. This inspector, female inspector, what an inspiration, that was running up in the Yorkshire Dales a team and was managing to really make a difference within her community. And also she ran a really tight ship, all men, and it was kind of like, I want to do that. I want to be a police officer. And at the age of 7 or 8, it's quite unusual, I think, to have decided and mapped out what your career is going to be and to have stuck with it. And there were a few little deviations along the way, but in general, police officer was what I wanted to be, and police officer was what I ended up being. And as a result, very organised, which I don't quite know where I get it from, to be honest, but I decided I was going to join the Guides, I was going to join St John's Ambulance, I did my Duke of Edinburgh, all of these things that were not academic things, but were really practical things that I thought would show when I eventually wanted to join the police that I was the sort of individual that they would want, that I was kind of helping people. I'd done my first aid training, I'd done my things in terms of volunteering as Duke of Edinburgh, all of those things. My whole life and my whole side of outside of school was set up around joining the police. And also I was quite sporty. I played county tennis, and I really enjoyed my sport. So what did I kind of do then? I sort of academic wise, I got my O levels, and I know that's going to age me, but I did get my O levels. And then I decided at 16 what I was going to do in terms of A levels. And the local comprehensive school that I went to didn't have A level law, and I thought that was going to be the best thing I could do to get into the police. So I went to a college quite just a few miles down the road, and decided to do A-level law along with human biology and geography. A right mishmash, but there we go. So I did my law A-level. But there I had the most amazing law lecturer, and she'd previously been a barrister, and she was an absolute inspiration and role model. And I sort of had my head turned a bit that actually maybe I could go to university. No one in my family had gone to university, my parents hadn't. And it was kind of like maybe I could go to university. And to be fair, it wasn't university then, let's be honest, it was Polytechnic. And I would try and see if I could get a law degree and then go on and be a solicitor or a barrister. So I managed to apply and get into Middlesex Poly, and I started my law degree for 3 years, much to the sort of proudness of my parents. And I was like, oh, I'm going off to further education. The story didn't end very well in terms of my law degree career. I did 3 months, and that was enough for me. I'd go on the train every day down to Hendon, and there were these 3 big buildings to my right every time I got off the train, and that was the Metropolitan Police Training Centre. And I was thinking, why am I going over here to, for academia and to do a law degree, which was all about government, politics, constitution, it wasn't about the law. A-level law was fantastic, and doing the degree wasn't at that time. So I really just decided, you know what, I can't do this. And for those of you, I had 3 essays to do. I hadn't put my pen on, because actually you had to write them physically there. There was no computers. I actually went to write these 3 essays, and I wasn't academic enough, I didn't think, to actually carry them out. And it was stressing me out that I was having to do this, and decided it's not for me. So literally after Christmas, when these essays were due in, I just never went back. That's most probably, unfortunately, in this day and age, you'd have to pay and things. I was fortunate that that wasn't an issue then. I just kind of left. And I just basically told my parents that I was going to go back to doing what I'd always wanted to do and be a police officer. I'd got the application form from the local police station, because none of it was online then. And I was applying to be a police officer. And I was going to carry on working for them in their sports shop until I got in. And I obviously had this real confidence at the age of 18, 19, that I was going to get into the police service. And that was it. And I never looked back, really. When I talk about my childhood, I talk about it with very fond memories. I'm really fortunate. I've had two really loving parents who always said, just be who you want to be and do what you want to do. And as long as you're happy, we're happy for you. And I could ask for no more. I had a happy childhood. There were some things in it that were quite difficult. Certainly at the beginning of the 1980s, my dad lost his job, like many did in the early 80s. And it was a really difficult time for people to get employment. And the country was in quite a difficult phase. Most probably not too dissimilar to people losing their jobs now, and the difficulties and things that causes within families. But I was very fortunate that having loving parents and having that loving relationship, that we were able to kind of get through it. The three amigos, as we were, just because I have no brothers or sisters. And having that foundation there really set me up for life, really. I still talk to them 3 times a day now. So I decided to apply for Bedfordshire Police because it was my local police force. I didn't want to go anywhere else. I didn't have anybody around me that was in the police service. So who did I go to find out about what policing was, or what I needed to do for the assessment, or all those sorts of things? And I suppose I was fortunate that we had a local beat officer who, the shop where Mum and Dad had was a bit of a tea stop, so I'd ask a few questions there, and then I got the application in, got told I had the assessment dates, and I will always remember my assessment. It's something I never really talk about too much, is the assessment, because it was actually quite traumatic for me. It was over 2 days. You had to go to headquarters, which is still at Kempston, and you did group exercises, you did all of these things. But on the second day, you had to do your fitness test. And I was always worried, whether it's a female thing, I was always worried about my weight, and that was I light enough to get into the force? Was I too heavy? So I'd gone on diets and starved myself, in particular the sort of couple of weeks before the assessment, and I most probably didn't give myself the best chance. I went and did the fitness test, absolutely passed it. You had to do a 1.5 mile round Kempston headquarters field, and then in 14 minutes for females and for 12 minutes for men, and I did it, I think, within about 12.5 minutes, so I was quite proud of myself. But then I promptly collapsed and fainted, and ended up the people doing the assessment having to call an ambulance for me and going to Bedford A&E. So you can imagine, I'm 18 years old, this is my dream, and I've tried and worked my whole school career. Everything I've done has been for this moment of joining Bedfordshire Police, and I mess it up by fainting, as far as I'm concerned. And I couldn't then I went to A&E. I mean, you couldn't write this. I went via, unfortunately, there was a sudden death of an infant. So I was in the ambulance, and this, the sergeant who'd come with me, it was on the radio that just round the corner from headquarters, there was this incident to go to. So they diverted, because I actually was fine. They diverted to this, and I had to sort of sit in the ambulance for an hour whilst the officer was dealing with this tragic incident. Then I went to the A&E department, and then I was absolutely fine. And I wanted to go back and do the interview, but they said, no, you have to do it again another time. And I was just absolutely, as an 18, I thought this was my career over. They were never going to have me, because I couldn't do the things, even though I'd passed them. Lo and behold, 3 months later, I got an opportunity to go back and do just the second part, the second day. So I didn't have to do it all again. I had to go and do the fitness test, which I'd kind of, again, managed to do it all. This time I'd been a bit sensible and hadn't kind of dehydrated myself so much that I fainted. And then I did my interview in the afternoon. And I thought, oh, they're going to, what are they going to say? actually worked in my favour. I remember the assistant chief constable interviewing me and saying, well, you've certainly got resilience at the age of 18 to come back after what happened last time. And I was kind of embarrassed, but I thought, well, I'm going to make the most of it. And said, well, actually, usually we'd ask people to do a bit of time in the special constabulary at your age because you're very young, but there is something about you. You've obviously got some resilience, so we're going to accept you. And I started Bedfordshire Police on June the 4th, 1990. I was 19 and 2 weeks old. 19 and 2 weeks. So the earliest at that stage you could join was 19 to go on patrol. So I'd made it, and I walked into Bedfordshire Police headquarters with a very large suitcase to walk in, to put all my uniform in, to put a very small handbag in this large suitcase with my little truncheon, my skirt, because back there it was very female orientated, the uniform. It wasn't very practical. And I remember that day like it was yesterday, walking into Bedfordshire Police headquarters, and I became WPC, because it's Woman Police Constable, not PC as it is now, 867, and that's the collar number I retained until I retired in 2020. So that's how I started. That's how I joined Bedfordshire Police. No academic qualifications. I'd done all the practical things, and I joined, and I've never looked back.